Okay, we should be live on YouTube. So welcome everyone. This is the node.js TSC meeting. Today is the 23rd July 2025, and we have an agenda today. But before we get into that, anybody has any announcements, anything they wanted to bring up to the group?
We have a new collaborator at DT.
Very nice. Glad to see them finally onboarded and doing some great work.
Yeah, I think in terms of TSC, I know we have the interim election happening right now. So to the TSC members, just a reminder to go vote. And we also are running a small survey for the collaborator summit in October, just to gauge interest from the collaborator base, who can actually be there, who wants to participate. So I'm trying to make that link as public as possible. As part of that, I sent it on Slack. I guess I've also just try to leave it in the GitHub discussions. So try to make it visible to all the collaborators. It will be nice if you are a collaborator, you're interested in participating, just to let us know so that we have an idea of how many participants to expect, that kind of thing.
Is the intent for this to be all on site or hybrid? Because I just know that there's a large number of folks that just aren't going to come to the US right now.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So I think the idea here is to just keep the same way we're doing, right? Like hybrid participation.
Okay.
And yeah. Cool. So if there's nothing else, let's move to the first item in the agenda here, which is the proposal to shift the annual major releases and shorten LTS duration. Rafael, I know you opened that. We already discussed a little bit in the release working group. Yeah, if we can.
Let me summarize it a bit because I have opened the issue, but I couldn't answer or I couldn't send more messages in the thread, and it became big. So the TLDR is basically we have strong support for moving to one major release per year and dropping the odd numbered lines. And also, some people expressed opinion that we should make the deprecation window slightly shorter, like runtime deprecations can be allowed in minors if we follow that idea. We have also discussed about stopping backporting most of the features to old lines and keep them in the new lines of Node.js, only bugs and security fixes. And there are a lot of people complaining about reducing the LTS time, 24 versus 30. And some of them also expressed opinion to increase the LTS time of Node.js lines. Because there are some overlap between when the major goes out and when people really upgrade their versions. It normally takes time, and in enterprise environments, it takes way more time. Again, a number of folks argue that 12 plus 12 of active and maintenance, 24 months of LTS is too short. Enterprise like IBM and Red Hat also wanted to keep the 30 months or more. I got positive feedback to the annual release. We just need to figure out the cadence between support of LTS versions, maintenance versions, and also there are some proposals to avoid the 6 months of untested users to release some official alpha, beta release candidates to cut directly on main to also make the development of Node.js is like easier. I think that's the good summary. We just need to discuss more about, and I believe that this will take more time. Tomorrow we will discuss it on Node.js release working group. But if you, for the ones that are watching the meeting, keep the feedback from our company, from your perspective, what should be the cadence. We want to do that with the community and also make the maintenance of Node.js from releasers slightly easier.
Yeah, curious, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of the proposals, I agree with the first one, which is converting the major releases to annual as opposed to once in 6 months. On the other hand, I believe reducing the LTS period is going to affect adversely to the users. I can speak from users' perspective as well, because I have seen that many workloads, many scenarios, many projects take extensive amount of time testing and doing the migration before stabilizing to a particular version. And then if we reduce the LTS version, it essentially means the frequency of jumps become much more, and it actually causes destabilization to the workload. So plus for the annual frequency, minus for the LTS reduction.
Yeah, James.
So far, I think we've been going off the impression that every major, like we went with this one major a year, that every major would end up going into an LTS. What if instead of that, we followed a pattern that was, more like Ubuntu or some of the other projects where every other year the major went into LTS, and then for that release line, that LTS, we can support that for, you know, 2 years or whatever. It would give us a nice, it would limit how much work we have to do on maintaining these LTS lines, give us fewer LTS lines, and then we could support those longer than just than trying to do every single one as an LTS. I'd have to sit down with it, figure out exactly if even I think it's a good idea, but it is an option that we have.
Oh, so James, just say it again, the original idea. I'm just trying to take notes here too.
The suggestion is, instead of making every major an LTS, we go every other major as an LTS. So every other year would be an LTS line. We'd still go to one major a year though.
Right.
Oh, okay. I thought your suggestion was to be every other year we do a release and all the release become LTS.
No, we would still do a major every year, but every other major would be the LTS.
Okay, so we still keep the odd numbered releases.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if we're doing a major every year, right? Then one year it's going to be odd number, the next year it's going to be even numbered, right?
Mhm.
If we just made it so that even numbered still stays the LTS and the odds number don't, we're
Okay.
at load a little bit.
Um, I think it would be great for us to list the problems we are facing with the current schedule, and then we try to attack them. And the one that I brought in the issue is the maintenance for security releases and also for a release cycle. And the original post, it was Mateo, is because no one really used the odd numbered release. So we have two issues that I believe that we could solve with this new release proposal. And I think that would be great if we list and try to attack them. But yeah, I mean, I feel that every 2 years of major release sounds good. I'm still not confident about releasing annually. I believe that all the release should be LTS, but it's up to another discussion.
I think the risk of doing a major every 2 years is that all these simple majors just stack up, stack up, stack up, stack up, and it becomes a much bigger risk of breaking people, if we're not shipping these things on a regular basis. And it's not theoretical. We saw this, we had this with Node, early on. And that dynamic, that algebra has not changed at all. So we need to be able to be shipping these Semver major changes regularly. They just don't all need to roll into a long-term support. And I don't think we're not going to change algebra at all. Companies are only going to use LTS versions. But we still need to get these changes out to the ecosystem, to the developers, and on a regular basis so that they can evolve and adapt and prepare. So,
Yeah, Marco, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think we should. So there is a moment in our release schedule where there are 4 release lines that we have to do security releases and security releases for. So by shifting making the gap longer between each major release, we could avoid this situation. And also, I think the main problems with maintenance, and I've done quite a lot of maintenance releases lately for the past year, is that we tend to backport a lot of things, and we were not super strict about the things that we release. So having, let's say we only backport fixes that are high priority, or we make backporting things stricter, or having even more delayed backport policy, it would reduce. I've been doing release every month by making it one every 2 months with fewer commits. Maybe would reduce the pressure a little bit, but this could fix a little bit the maintenance problem.
Right. Michael?
I guess I just didn't quite understand how it helps to do a major, like the odd majors. Like if the assertion was starting point, nobody uses the odds anyway. And so just making the cadence longer, but keeping the odds, I'm not sure I see how that helps, unless maybe we said we do them, but they're not supported at all. But then why not? If we're going to do them, what's the difference between them being LTS or not LTS in the odd ones, right?
The specific difference there, I mean, we have 2 audiences, really. We have all of the users, the application developers, enterprises, or whatever. Then we also have the ecosystem of module developers. The reason we had this current schedule, is really to serve both of those. When we first put this together, it was companies were like, we're only going to upgrade once a year at the most. And we want this overlap, and we want, because we need to be able to have a few months to go from one to the other, and we need to stay supported on whatever. That's one cycle. The other cycle is the ecosystem of module developers say we need to be able to update our stuff. If we know breaking changes are coming, if we know new APIs are coming, we want to be able to take advantage of new V8 features in our modules. And it was really to give them enough time to start adopting these things and using these things and getting their modules ready, so that when that LTS version did hit, right, everything just worked and they were able to transition. So, we still have to make sure we're supporting both of those audiences. Companies are still only going to upgrade max 1 node version a year. like one major a year max, right? You know, most often, maybe not even that, maybe one every couple of years. But the module developers, the ecosystem developers, they're the ones that are going to be regularly updating and regularly making sure their modules, you know, continue to work, and we have to support them. We can't do that if we're pushing out these December major changes or even December minor changes, you know, to a year, you know, where they're not going to show up for a year.
Yeah, plus one to what James was just saying. I would take a wager that the majority of odd number downloads come from CI, where the module developers do not necessarily target 23, 25, and a specific odd number. They just take current, and they don't care which current it is at a given point in time. They just want to know what's coming. And if that would only come once a year, with a major, then that's kind of a problem. At the same time, what I don't believe developers would be, or module developers would be doing in CI, is target something like alpha or beta. So the current odd number releases, they're very good for bringing breaking changes in a shorter, or shorter time frame. But replacing that with something which has a pre-release label is not a sufficient replacement for module developers.
Would, in response to that, like, if they're targeting the current, do they need support for that current? Like, if we
No,
never backported anything
likely
to
not.
them.
Like, no, not at all. Absolutely not. Because the
Right.
moment 25 rolls over to 26, I don't care about 25 anymore.
Okay. Because like, I don't know if that would help in terms of our like cutting down the work by just saying like, okay, you keep the odds, but they just are not supported. So like we cut them, but that's it. We don't backport fixes or security releases or anything like that.
Right. The current, which is an odd one, is always cut from main. There is a hanging 30-day window for support, I think, where it's going from current straight into maintenance. I don't think that's necessary at all, because nobody in real production who needs support is going to target 25 specifically and need 30-day support for that.
Yeah, and I meant basically, like today it would be 6 months plus 30. We would just make it 0. Sorry, Joyce.
I just have a quick follow-up to Philip. I just want to make sure I understand well your point here. But for module authors, like specifically that audience, right? What makes you think they will not be able to adopt, let's say, pre-releases, like a beta channel, an alpha channel, versus just the odd numbered major?
It has a different connotation than just a major release. If you tell me something's alpha or beta, it means that there can be more breaking changes.
Yeah, the stability.
Cool.
And
Okay.
Joey had her hand up for a while, so I want to
Yes.
make sure.
I heard that there are two audiences. I think there's another audience that I found out when I was working on records and I broke things. I think there's another audience out there. They use Node because the thing that they use rely on Node. They don't really care about Node itself, and they use current. They probably use some CLI tools that depends on some version of Node. They use current, and when you break them, they get upset, as I found out. I'm wondering, like, where would they sit with the new schedule?
With those, typically they're just going to take whatever they're given. They don't, you know, like you said, they don't care. So really, that goes back to, you know, whoever's building that tool that they're using. They're the ones that care. Like, you know, the end user, of course, just wants everything to work, but it's going to be that developer that's actually going to make that decision. And for that, they're not going to pick up something that says alpha or beta or whatever. They're going to want something that says, hey, this is stable. They don't necessarily care that it's long-term support. They just want it to be stable. And I think that's the key distinction here. The module develop all this module developers or application developers that are using Node don't want to build on something that's unstable. And we saw that back in IOJS because they were releasing so often, and these ecosystem developers were like, oh crap, slow down, please give us a chance to catch up, because it was too unstable. And so you know, like I said, I don't think any of that algebra has actually changed. So
One thing important is that I've been doing the several major release of Node.js, I think the last four, and we are not shipping too many breaking changes. And specifically, we are just doing the major release because we have to. We have a schedule. That's why. But what if we set a minimum time of major release for a year? But if the 12 months pass and we check the several major pull requests and we don't see a lot of things, there's no need to release the major version. I feel I mean I know that we should have a schedule for sure, but we could announce that the new major release of Node.js will go out in the next 2 months. But we can decide that only when we have enough commits or enough several major commits to do the release. We don't need to stick to a schedule just because it's the schedule, because most of the several major release I did in the last years was they were not really breaking change. They are just a release because of the release schedule, but they could wait for sure.
we've never had a year where we haven't had a stack up of at least some breaking changes. But now back when I had talked, it was probably about 50 different companies when I started putting together this first plan. And the common theme was not necessarily like, oh, there's a new version. Now I'm going to start my upgrade planning. It was always, it needs to be predictable. And this is why it's like, certain, specific months throughout, in the year. And it was actually very specific, like the April and October was actually very specific because one falls into last quarter, one falls at the beginning of the second quarter, which fell into the planning cycle for when these companies were going to start looking at, like, okay, what do we need to do over the next year? What do we need to do for next year? What needs to be, like, what do we need to allocate time for, budget for, that kind of thing. And having that known where, hey, we're going to get a new LTS version in October means that I can plan ahead for next year for what my development teams need to do, or what my whatever the engineering team to do to migrate. And so it was chosen very specifically for that predictability, because that's what the companies were specifically asking for. Unless we've seen that need change, I think we need to stay fairly predictable.
Yeah, Michael.
I just wanted to go back to like the earlier discussion of like the odds. Like, I think somebody, I can't remember if it's Raphael or Roy, you mentioned like some points we have 4 things we have to do backports and security releases for. I wonder if just like a simple thing is, if we said odds are not supported, there are no security releases, that at least drops that by 1, I think, down, and maybe that. Anyway, I just thought that like that's maybe a simple thing, that if we think people they want them to use to test, but they're not using them in production, would be a simple thing that wouldn't affect that model and cuts down by at least 1 release that we need to handle in terms of the backporting and security releases.
I think if we said any current release line wasn't going to get security fixes, it'd be the one way to guarantee that the module ecosystem would not use them.
So, but that's the module ecosystem, or because like what I heard earlier, it was like, well, the people who are actually in production, they're going to use the LTSs, so they're not going to use those other ones. But what Flip was, we still want the module authors to be testing on them. right?
But they won't. So they're not going to. The modular ecosystem is not going to look at it like we're using this to test it. They're looking at it like we're using this to support this because if users are using that version, we want our stuff to work. They don't want to be, test pigeons for us, right? And that's not going to be their motivation. It's like this is the current version. I want my thing to work on the current version, so I'm going to use this. If the current version is not stable, I'm not going to use it.
Yeah, there seems to be a bit of like, it's almost like you're saying we have to support it even though nobody will use it to convince people to test it for us, right? Like I hear what you're saying, but I also hear like something that sounds like, well, we got to do work that's not actually useful to convince people to do something which is unrelated to that. So it makes me wonder if there's some
Or
other
we
way to
redefine
achieve
it.
that.
Or we redefine it. If let's say if we go to just the one major per year, if we said during that year that thing is supported, yes, like during that during that cycle, it's got support. It's going to get releases. It's going to be stable. That's the version that they have for that year. It's stable, right? It's they're going to use it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's long-term support. It might be that just like we do at the 6 month, odd numbers now, where we just terminate it a month or two after, right? We have those odd numbers for a year. That's stable and supported for, let's say, a year and 3 months. But it's that LTS, that even number that comes out every other year. That's the one that we're definitely going to support for, 48 months or whatever, this longer period.
Yeah, that makes sense.
During
Period is like short enough. And I just heard Flip say 6 months, like a year was too long or something. But yeah, I know if whatever period we agree is short enough, then extending to fit that does make sense.
For companies adopting the LTS, the only thing that's needed is we need to have an LTS to LTS overlap of at least like let's say 3 months, maybe more, and like probably preferably 6 months, so that if somebody is coming off, transitioning off an LTS going to an LTS, right, they're never at a point where like the support for what they're moving away from is going to disappear, and for whatever reason. But those odd number ones, those ones in between, those don't need that guarantee. And the module ecosystem developers aren't asking us for that support guarantee. They just want to know that while that one is used, they can depend on it. If that makes sense. Richard's had his hand up for a while.
Two things, just jumping around a bit now. On the Semver major changes, one of the reasons that we do Semver majors is to pick up new V8 versions, and new V8 versions are Semver major. So, even if we don't have a lot of Node Semver majors, people do want new V8, new JavaScript language features, which come in a new V8 version. And at the moment, because we expose the V8 API to module authors, whoever is using it, although we have things like Node, is it Node add-on API now, whatever we call it, to try and mitigate those API changes from V8, they are Semver major. So, any V8 update is Semver major, and we do know people want those. So even if we don't have many Node Semver majors, we will always have a desire to see the new V8s. On the predictability thing, I can reinforce that, people I've spoken to, that predictability thing of a predictable release cycle and support life cycle is the major concern, one of the major concerns of enterprise customers and enterprises. When I first mentioned the proposal, the first looks were of aghast, and I had to reassure people that all of the existing release lines were not being changed, that we were not retroactively going back to shorten the support life cycles of releases that are already out there. And this was all about future things. When I don't know how many people were around, when we cut Node 16's support cycle short to coincide with OpenSSL, that caused a lot of angst in the enterprise world, because they planned their upgrade cycles on the predictability of how long a version was going to be in support for, and being told after they'd made their plans that, oh, now you've got 6 months left. that was a major headache for them, because they now had to figure out how to change a plan that they'd already committed to. So being able to have a predictable
thing that other people can plan around is quite an important thing for the LTS stuff, and that's partly why when we talk about changing things, I'm very hesitant to change things just so that we can try something out, because depending on what changes, it starts disrupting the predictability. And one of the things that businesses don't like is uncertainty. So having it being predictable and not changing it, on a year by year basis gives them some confidence that they can build a plan around things. And that's why one of the suggestions has been like, we prefer longer LTS cycles because then we can plan further ahead, and a bit more certainty. So that is something that we should keep in mind. So if we come up with changes that don't, for example, change the LTS, if all we were doing is saying getting rid of the current releases, but we still had an LTS each year with the support life cycles that we currently have, in that respect, nothing would change. So for the LTS, for the enterprise customers, a proposal along those lines wouldn't change anything for them. But when you start lengthening or shortening the actual support time of an LTS release, then that's something that people now need to adapt for and plan. Whatever they've planned for currently, the future releases now become in flux and they have to do replanning.
Yeah. And again, none of that is theoretical. I've seen this, talk to customers specifically who've specifically said these things.
I just reinforcing that I don't think it's changed from when we had those discussions some time ago.
So I think it's definitely going to take some kind of more thinking through. But I think what we need at this point is probably a couple of proposals on the table and just kind of think through. But just to reinforce what Richard was saying is like, this is not something we can just experiment with. We can't just do like A/B testing in the wild and see what works and stuff. We have to think this through now, because there are very real ramifications for enterprise developers planning budget. We don't want to introduce too much uncertainty. I'm sorry, Philip, you had your hand up. I think I spoke.
On the topic of being sure what we are doing here, we need to take into consideration, obviously, the dependencies that we have and their own LTS, and specifically that is OpenSSL. OpenSSL has been in a state where 3.0 has been LTS for a long time. Now it's going to be replaced by 3.5, or already was. But 3.5 is a turning point for OpenSSL, where now they want to declare a new LTS every 2 years, so that at any point in time there are at least 2 active LTSs. And there is no way that we can have our LTS that doesn't overlap with a semver major or even minor, because OpenSSL is really funky with their actual definition of semver major with OpenSSL's LTS. So if we're going to do benchmarking of the different proposals, we should overlap the OpenSSL release schedule on top of it to see whether it actually can work.
Yeah. And not just OpenSSL, we also have to keep in mind whether we can get V8 critical fixes long, if we make our LTS longer. We've seen in the past that does get a bit tricky.
I just want to mention that we'll keep discussing that at the release working group meeting, and tomorrow we'll have a meeting. So if you want to start to keep discussing that, because I don't think we will be able to discuss every 3SC meeting about the same topic. And this, as James mentioned, and also Philip, we need to be sure about the proposal, and we will need to redesign that several times. So please engage in the issue and also participate in the release meeting. That will help us. And I think we can tomorrow we will try to define some actionables. What we have agreed so far, which is at least 1 release per year. I think this is something everybody supports so far, and then we start shaping up. But that's it.
Yeah. Especially given that it's tomorrow, going to be a quick follow-up if anyone can attend that meeting. It's about the same time as this one, so.
Might have a conflict, but I'll try to jump in. Yeah, either way, I'll add, Antoine, I see you added a comment to that thread about my idea. I'll jump in there and expand on it.
Awesome. Cool. I think we can move to the next item on the agenda here, which is the Node.js icon standardization. Is there anyone more familiar with the issue that wants to speak up about it? If not, I took a quick glance before the meeting. It looks like the action item right now is for someone in the TSC to go and update the logos across the different organizations at GitHub, different profiles, from what I understand. But the marketing team from the OpenJS Foundation followed up and already approved the changes that they were proposing. So I don't think
Probably the easiest thing to do would be have like, I don't have a lot of context on this, but if we had like a tracking issue in the TSC repo that just listed all the places that need to be updated, then it would make it a lot easier for us to kind of incrementally go through, and any one of us could do that.
Yeah.
Should be in admin repo. Just
Say again?
should be in admin repo.
I'm sorry, I still didn't understand what you said. Sorry. I think it's fine.
I was saying that the tracking issue should probably be in admin instead of TC.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Either way,
Right.
as long as there is a tracking issue somewhere that allows us to.
You know what? It's already there. It's already in Node.js admin 985. Update to organization logo. So I think there's a few.
And all the places that need to be updated there?
Yeah, there's a few checkboxes here. I assume. Yeah. Cool.
It was a good idea.
Yeah, I think other than that was just more for awareness.
Cool.
Okay. Next one here, then. Oh, is the TSC election.
Yeah, there's probably nothing we need to. I mean, we've already reminded folks that the vice chair vote is open. I think we just need to just declare it. I mean, Matteo is the only candidate for chair. So at this point, moving forward, Matteo is our TSC chair. So
Awesome.
Yay. He's gonna do a good job.
All right, so the next item here, update charter with communication responsibilities.
Yeah, this is the two charter proposals that are there.
Right.
Sean, I don't know if you've seen further comments on yours. I've not had further comments on mine at this point.
No further comments on my PR release. So there are some disagreements on some parts of the text. So I want to discuss those to understand the next steps. So just for context, I can share the link to the main objection I could find, which is this one. It's shared in the chat. So the text here says that if the TSC becomes aware of external communication that appears inconsistent with the project's consensus, it may engage with the communicating party directly or through appropriate channels to help align the message with the project's consensus-seeking processes. So the disagreement here, as far as I know, is that this adds too much bureaucracy and process, and this is just too slow. But the counter argument is that we already have some processes which we follow on GitHub for various things. So there's a lot of back and forth discussion happening on that. So I wanted to know where we stand as a whole as the TSC.
Well, I mean, one thing, I mean, it definitely needs to be recognized that we can only control the things we can control. We can't control what anybody else says. Even the foundation. The foundation can go off and say whatever. Now, if we look at that and say, well, that's inaccurate, we always have the option of going to them and saying, hey, that's inaccurate. We can't require them to change anything. So I think part of it comes back to what is the actual goal? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? If it's just a matter of making sure that we're aligned on communication, I think it's better for us to more proactively engage upfront in advance than to try to retroactively like, oh, you published something that we don't agree with. Let's, please correct that. It's easier for us to engage with the marketing team throughout the process in advance of anything to make sure that we're all on the same page as we go through the process. And I think, I think, and that's kind of where I'm at. The language that you've proposed to me, at least, seems like it's trying to solve the wrong part of the problem. If that makes sense.
Joey, go ahead.
Problem that I'm trying to solve is that when that happens, when we need to do postmortem, we should be able to do so. Instead of the argument being, well, we are not supposed to do this. We are not in a position to do this. We're not even in a position to remind anybody about this. The goal is that so that at least we're empowered to like at least say something. It's not really in our control whether the other party is going to take that, but we're at least empowered to actually do something instead of just like, well, we're not in a position to do anything.
The thing I'm curious about is why do you feel like you're not?
I think
If I saw the foundation publish something that was incorrect, I know I could reach out to the marketing team and tell them and give them the information, and I would expect them to correct it. I mean, is there been specific things that have happened that make you feel like you can't do that?
it's not the marketing team. It's other people telling us no. But I'm not going to talk about it in the TSC meeting. It's more like people in the middle who are not part of the foundation, but try to speak on, trying to help or something. And then speak to, at least to me, feels like in a way to like, no, you're not in a position to talk anything about it. I think that's the thing that this tries to prevent is that, well, we're at least in a position to talk about it, instead of just shut up. And it's not really the foundation. The foundation didn't say anything. It's like other people trying to say, well, the foundation should have the right. Well, yes, but we're also in a position to say something. And we're not really supposed to be told to shut up. Because even the foundation didn't say shut up. It's just somebody else in the middle.
No, well, I mean, if it's a agent of or employee of the foundation, then it is the foundation. And if
It's
that's
someone unaffiliated, not part of the foundation, not employee, just somebody else. So that's like the very weird situation, I would say. And at least like the text would at least say, well, at least the TSC, which is already what we've been doing. If we notice something that seems like, kind of like deviating from the consensus, we talk internally a bit and we remind the other party whether they're going to take it, whether they're going to make corrective action. This is like not really something we can control, but we're at least empowered to say, well, it's part of the thing that we do, and the least we can do.
So I'm definitely understanding the frustration. I just don't. I don't think putting words down in the charter is actually going to solve this particular problem. I think it's looking at it from the wrong perspective. This tends to come down to more of a communication process than a policy process. We can't put down a policy that we're allowed to do this. You have to listen to us. They don't. Even if we had it in the charter, it might make us feel better about like saying, hey, we have the authority to do this, but they still can come back and say no. It's about building that relationship to where you have that two-way conversation, and that's not something that we can document as policy. It's relationship that we have to build. So I think like if we sat down and just kind of like took a step back, what are the not what are the theoretical issues? What are the concrete issues we've had? Like, have those issues been dealt with? Yes or no? Are there still remaining? Yes, no. And then we work through those types of issues that way. Now, if it ultimately comes back that we reach a point where we just can't make, advance forward, then I think we come back and say, is there something process and policy wise that we need to address? My fear is that we're going to go through this effort of like putting this stuff in there, and then it's just like nothing's going to change because it's the wrong way of addressing the problem. But I hope that makes sense. And I'm not just being argumentative here. I definitely understand. Sure, you understand. I understand what the frustrations are and kind of and where they're coming from. I just don't think this is the right way to solve them.
I think is not exclusive to the other thing that you're talking about. They can happen at the same time. Is that I don't see any downside of putting like codifying what we're already doing. This is like not something we invent. It's something we've already been doing for years. And like codifying it in the charter, which is I guess supposed to be about what we do. It's not really a policy. It's more like something we do. I think a lot of times when we change the charter, we're just trying to document things we're already doing, instead of like trying to propose anything. And would be one of those changes. And it's not really specific about just about the marketing because there are many other cases where when we are doing this, when we notice people say things on social media, they're kind of representing the project in a way that other party would be like, oh, are you endorsing certain things on behalf of the project? We'll try to remind people, try not to speak on behalf or like create the kind of misunderstanding out there. Or like when there are standard bodies that people go to, we also do that. Like it's like without this, like the standard position repository would kind of like, well, the TSC is not even chartered to set up a standard position, the repository. It's just it's kind of like things that we are not chartered to do. With this, we're kind of like already chartered to have that kind of repository under our oversight. Um, is broader than just marketing.
So, like I said, I mean, I definitely, I definitely get where you're coming from, and I'll take a couple of days here and go back to the proposed text in that because I'm one of them that object to that language, so I'll come back and revisit it, but. Regardless of what we say in terms of so and so doesn't represent the project, they post on it, whatever. I remember like years ago back when IBM, we did one of the very first social media guidelines for a company. At that time, this was going way back. We had in there an initial idea like if employees were going to post on social media, they had to make it clear that we're not speaking on behalf of the company. And all the legal folks were like, cool, yeah, go ahead and do that. But it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter what disclaimer you say. It doesn't matter what policy we have. If an employee of a company says anything in any capacity online, it can be viewed that that is an employee of that company. They're representative of the company. And that has never changed, and it doesn't matter how many disclaimers or how many policies you have that you're not speaking on behalf. If you have a relationship with, then somebody is going to say you're speaking on behalf of. And we're never going to be able to get away from that. But and also we can never actually control what people actually say. Like we can have some like goals that we're aspiring to. We can have some things that we say, hey, this is really how you should act, just like we have in the membership guidelines now, like, hey, TSC members, especially go out to social media and air dirty laundry. Like we can have expectations, but we can't necessarily have policies that are actually effective to that end. But like I said, I definitely understand what you're saying and where this is coming from. Give me a couple of days. Let me look at that language again and see if there's some way that we can capture what is needed there. I'm just not convinced that the current language is actually going to be effective.
Yeah, I'm happy that someone is willing to trick the test like wordsmith it. I think what I'm trying to get from is like the TC charter is not really about what we want. Like it's not even about expectation or like policy governing the whole organization. It's about what we do. And what we do already is that when we notice something is going on, we try to do our best to communicate and correct. And that's what we set out to do. That's what we chartered to do. Whether the other party accept is up to them, but at least we can put in our charter that say that this is something we're chartered to do. So that's what I'm trying to get. If there are wording suggestions to make it reflect it better, that would be very welcome.
Great.
I do have a slight different opinion of the charter. The charter doesn't necessarily document like kind of what we do, because that's all the other policy documents, the contributor guidelines and that kind of thing. The charter, for me at least, is more about carving out the, what specifically is the project's responsibility versus what is the foundation's responsibility. It is that thing that draws the boundary between those two. Yes, it talks a little bit about how we work, but that is it's in there specifically as part of the agreement of setting the expectations for the foundation to say, okay, yes, you can have those responsibilities. Yes, we understand how you're going to be structured in order to execute on those responsibilities. And yes, we agree to that boundary. That's kind of where I view the role of the charter, and all the other documents we have being the thing that outline what we do on a daily basis. But I mean, it's it may be a distinction without a difference, but that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I think what I'm trying to get at is that, well, we can probably agree that when there's consensus being kind of communicated wrong, someone will need to try to do something. It doesn't really need to be TSC, but it's basically always TSC, or I guess we cannot really expect the foundation to like have extra stuff to always pay attention to all this and do all this. It's like, yes, we can probably request. I doubt they will have the staff to do this. And if not, then we can see if this is something we can put into our charter. If it's not, then it needs to go to somebody else's charter, and I doubt any other party would be able to take this on.
Honestly, I don't see any reason why we couldn't or shouldn't invite, at the very least, foundation marketing team folks to release team meetings and TSC meetings. So at least they know what is happening. Whether they show up or not is entirely on them. But let's make sure that there's a standing invitation to where they're always going to be involved with these processes. And so they have the opportunity to participate, and they have their opportunity there to say. The other thing that we might consider doing is maybe we just make the marketing team like, actual project members, actually, not necessarily collaborators, but contributors, and we view them as contributors just like anyone else. And they're part of the process. They're part of the conversation. I think so. I think there's a couple of ways, alternative ways that we can look at this, and we can improve that that conversation back and forth. Yeah. So I mean, that's just where I'm at right now.
I don't know if you remember, but I did propose that we can do more collaborative reviews of what we do, the communication on GitHub, and I got refused. I offered to do one-to-one mentoring to do this if they are not comfortable with doing this on GitHub, and I got refused. I don't know how to post there.
Let's talk through it. Let's look at options. We can have some conversations offline and figure out.
Yeah, we're at time here, so before we leave, anybody wants to? We need to hang to steal for a private session, or we're good for today?
Private? No, I don't think there's anything private. I will say there is the one issue that I had tagged TSC agenda about some collaborative guidelines just on dealing with objections. I purposefully pulled that off. We don't need to discuss it here, but I want to remind folks if you can take a look at it. If we're not able to resolve the objection by next TSC meeting, then I probably will ask for a vote. So just heads up.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you all.
Oh.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Right, folks.